He earned a promotion, walked into his first shift at a higher rank, and vanished inside the police station. No report. No search. No alarm. 8 years later, only his uniform brought him back. The people who should protect him were the last to speak. What really happened inside that sealed bay? If you love real crime stories where the truth hides in plain sight, stay with me. Because tonight's case begins inside a police station, not on a dark street, not in a hidden alley, but right among sworn officers who promised to protect one another. Detective Karim Falad had just received the call every officer waits for. A promotion. A higher rank. A bigger responsibility. A new future. His family celebrated. His colleagues congratulated him. His supervisors shook his hand. And then, he walked into his next shift. He was never seen alive again. No emergency call. No struggle caught on camera. No official report that made sense. For 8 long years, Karim's name was quietly removed from daily briefings. His desk was cleared. His locker reassigned. His disappearance slowly turned into an uncomfortable memory no one wanted to discuss. Until one uniform, torn, faded, and unmistakably his, brought the past crashing back into the present. And when the case reopened, the most dangerous suspects were not criminals on the street. They were the people who worked beside him. The morning Detective Karim Falad disappeared began like a celebration. At exactly 7:18 a.m., his name was read aloud during roll call. The station commander confirmed his promotion to senior field officer, effective immediately. Applause filled the briefing room. A few officers slapped his shoulder. One joked that Karim would finally escape night patrol. Karim smiled, but several people later said it looked forced. By 9:40 a.m., he was officially reassigned to a new operational unit, a small team responsible for internal security transport and evidence escorts. It was a sensitive post. Only trusted officers were allowed in. His new supervisor, Inspector Tund Marrow, signed the transfer sheet himself. CCTV showed Karim walking through the South Corridor shortly after noon, carrying a sealed brown file and wearing his newly issued rank badge for the first time. That was the last confirmed image of him. Radio logs showed his call sign remained active until 2:11 p.m. One short transmission was recorded. "Control, I've arrived. Standing by with the team." No distress call followed. No emergency alert. No request for backup. By the end of the shift, Karim Falad had vanished, inside the very building designed to keep officers safe. When Karim Falad failed to return home that night, his wife, Mariam Falad, called the station herself. The front desk told her there had been a late operational task. Nothing unusual. No cause for concern. But by the next morning, Karim still hadn't called. Inside the station, something far more disturbing was happening. His disappearance was not logged as a missing officer. Instead, his name was quietly marked as on temporary reassignment. The duty officer who normally filed end-of-shift confirmations later claimed he was told not to worry about Karim's status and to leave it for command. That instruction came from Inspector Tund Marrow. 2 junior officers admitted they searched the South Corridor and the secured transport bay where Karim was last seen. They found his access card on the floor near the evidence elevator. It had been deactivated. No report was written. No supervisor signed off on a search. By the 3rd day, rumors had already begun to spread through the building. Some said Karim had been transferred out secretly. Others whispered he had uncovered something during his first assignment with the internal transport unit. Mariam returned to the station demanding answers. But the people who had celebrated Karim's promotion only days earlier now avoided her eyes. 3 officers were listed as Karim Falad's new operational team. Sergeant Bola Renshaw, Transport Lead. Officer Eli Turner, Vehicle Control. Corporal Victor Hale, Evidence Escort. On paper, it was a routine unit. In reality, it was one of the quietest teams in the building. They handled sealed movements, sensitive evidence, high-risk transfers, and internal deliveries that never appeared on public schedules. Access logs showed Kareem was officially added to their clearance list at 9:46 a.m. the morning he disappeared. But here was the problem. Bola Renshaw later told investigators Kareem never reported to her. Eli Turner said he saw Kareem briefly near the transport bay, but claimed he was already leaving with someone else. Victor Hale insisted Kareem never showed up at all. 3 statements. 3 different timelines. When Internal Affairs quietly reviewed vehicle records, one unmarked transport van had been signed out that afternoon by Victor Hale. The return time was logged as normal. The GPS file for that trip, however, was missing. Not corrupted. Not damaged. Deleted. For the first time, a clear pattern began to form. Kareem hadn't vanished on his own. He had walked directly into a team that controlled where people and things could disappear. The brown file Kareem Falad was seen holding in the South Corridor became the quiet obsession of the case. According to the transfer sheet, the file was marked as a restricted internal audit package, meant to be delivered directly to the transport unit supervisor. No digital copy existed in the public system. Only one physical folder was ever recorded. And it vanished with him. 8 days after Kareem disappeared, a junior records clerk came forward in private. She said Kareem had visited the archive room less than an hour before he was last seen on camera. He asked for a sealed audit file connected to internal evidence movements over the previous 6 months. Not street crime. Not gang activity. Police logistics. She remembered because he looked nervous. Not rushed. Not confused. Focused. When investigators later searched the archive shelf where the file had been stored, the space was empty. The sign-out card was missing too. Even more troubling, system logs showed someone had accessed the audit record after Kareem disappeared, using a supervisor-level login. That login belonged to Inspector Tund Merrow. When questioned years later, Merrow claimed he never touched the file. But the timestamp on the access record matched the exact hour Mariam Falad was standing at the front desk, begging officers to help find her husband. 6 months before his promotion, Kareem Falad had filed a sealed internal complaint. It never became public. The document surfaced only years later, when an off-site archive was finally audited during a departmental restructuring. Kareem's complaint described repeated irregularities in evidence transport, sealed packages arriving late, chain of custody signatures missing, and vehicle logs altered after completed trips. He didn't accuse anyone by name. But he did name the unit. The same internal transport team he would later be assigned to. According to the file, Kareem had first raised concerns after noticing that several high-profile cases were collapsing in court, not because of weak evidence, but because custody records could not be verified. In one paragraph, he wrote a sentence that now feels chilling. If the movement system is compromised, the truth will never reach the courtroom. The complaint had been officially acknowledged by a supervising officer. That officer was Inspector Tund Merrow. Yet no follow-up interviews were recorded. No risk assessment. No protective reassignment. Instead, 3 months later, Kareem was placed directly into the unit he had quietly questioned. When investigators finally traced the complaint's handling path, they discovered the internal review had been closed by the same office responsible for approving Kareem's promotion. The system that rewarded him was also the system that buried his warning. For nearly 8 years, Kareem Falad's case stayed frozen. No suspects. No official investigation team. No public updates. Then, a construction crew clearing an abandoned service yard on the edge of the city uncovered a partially buried uniform. The fabric was faded. The rank badge was corroded. But the serial tag stitched inside the collar matched a single name in the police supply system. Kareem Falad. There were no personal belongings. No wallet. No radio. No weapon. Only the uniform and scattered bone fragments beneath it. The location shocked everyone. The yard had once been used by the department itself as a temporary vehicle holding zone during renovations, 8 years earlier. When forensic teams reconstructed the timeline, they realized something disturbing. The site had been searched twice in unrelated operations during the years Karim was missing. Nothing had been reported. This time, however, the uniform told a story no report could erase. It confirmed what his family had been forced to accept in silence. Karim had never left the job. He had died inside it. And once the identification became official, the department had no choice but to reopen the file. Not as a disappearance, but as a homicide connected to internal operations. The moment Karim Falad's uniform was officially identified, the investigation changed direction. Not outward. Inward. A special internal review task group was quietly assembled, and the first names placed on the access list were not criminals, informants, or known offenders. They were employees. Bola Renshaw, Eli Turner, Victor Hale, and Inspector Tund Marrow. Every workstation they had used over the last decade was locked down. Old computers were pulled from storage. Backup servers were searched for erased transport records. What investigators uncovered was not a single mistake. It was a pattern. Dozens of transport logs showed late edits made after trips had already been completed. Digital signatures appeared on files at times when officers were officially off duty. Surveillance clips from the transport bay were found to be missing, always on days when the internal team handled sealed packages. When confronted, each member of the unit repeated the same defense. They barely knew Karim. He was new. He wasn't their responsibility. But the system told a different story. Karim's access card had been used inside the transport bay 47 minutes after his last radio transmission. Only 3 people had authorization to activate that door. And all 3 still worked there. The investigation had finally reached the people who could not walk away from it. The first interview lasted less than 12 minutes. Corporal Victor Hale sat across from internal investigators with his arms folded, calm and almost bored. He repeated the same statement he had given 8 years earlier. Karim never arrived. The van left on schedule. The return log was accurate. But this time, the investigators had something they never had before. A rebuilt access timeline. A backup server, overlooked during a previous system upgrade, contained partial door activation records from the transport bay. The files were incomplete, but one detail survived. Victor Hale's login. It activated the bay door at 2:58 p.m. Karim's radio transmission ended at 2:11. Victor froze when the timestamp was placed in front of him. He claimed someone must have used his credentials. Then came the second problem. The rebuilt system showed a second access attempt, 7 minutes later, using Bola Renshaw's authorization code. 2 separate officers. 2 separate logins. 1 sealed location. The van that supposedly returned empty had been inside the bay for 36 minutes longer than reported. When investigators pressed Victor again, his voice changed. He didn't deny the entry. He only said one sentence. It wasn't supposed to go that far. Victor Hale's sentence became the turning point. When investigators pushed him to explain what he meant, he asked for a break. 20 minutes later, he asked for legal representation. But the damage was already done. By then, technicians had finished rebuilding fragments of the transport bay cameras. Most of the footage was permanently lost. But one corrupted clip survived, only 19 seconds long. It showed a van reversing into the sealed bay. The rear doors opened. 4 figures were visible. One of them was Karim Falad. He was not handcuffed. He was walking. Then the video glitched. What followed came from synchronized access logs and movement sensors. The bay doors closed at 3:04 p.m. No other entry was recorded for nearly 40 minutes. Investigators now believed Karim had been confronted inside the bay about the audit file he was carrying. Not arrested. Not detained. Cornered. Someone tried to force him to hand over what he knew. But something went wrong. Medical consultants later concluded the limited physical evidence recovered with the uniform was consistent with a sudden, close-range assault, likely during a struggle. The team had not planned a killing. They had planned silence. And once Karim stopped breathing, they planned survival. The arrests happened quietly. No press conference. No flashing lights at the station entrance. Inspector Tund Marrow was taken in first, pulled from a closed-door meeting and escorted out through a side hallway he had walked for years. Within hours, Bola Renshaw and Victor Hale were suspended and formally charged. Eli Turner followed 2 days later, after financial records linked him to altered transport contracts tied to failed court cases. The official findings confirmed what Karim Falad had suspected long before his promotion. The transport unit had been manipulating evidence movement, delaying deliveries, rerouting sealed packages, and quietly destroying chain-of-custody records to protect outside partners and internal allies. Karim was never meant to disappear. He was meant to be intimidated. Investigators concluded that when he refused to surrender the audit file inside the transport bay, the confrontation escalated. Panic followed. Then a decision that could never be undone. For Mariam, the truth came too late, but it came with names, timelines, and accountability. Karim's final act was not silence. It was exposure. If this story disturbed you, it should. Because what happened to Karim Falad wasn't the work of a hidden criminal network on the streets. It was built inside a system that people are taught to trust without question. A uniform. A badge. A hallway everyone walks through every day. For 8 years, silence protected the wrong people. Not fear. Not confusion. Silence. Karim didn't become a hero because he chased a dangerous suspect. He became one because he questioned a quiet process no one else wanted to touch. He believed that if evidence is moved, controlled, or erased, then justice itself can be manipulated. And the price for challenging that belief was his life. So here's my question to you. How many other cases were buried before someone finally noticed the pattern? If you want more true crime deep dives that expose what really happens behind closed doors, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Most importantly, leave a comment below. Do you think this could have been stopped if one person had spoken up earlier? Because sometimes, the most dangerous crime scene is the place where no one is watching.